Good evening and welcome, Pleasanton. Welcome to our first virtual town hall. And my name is David Swing. I'm the Pleasanton Police Chief, and I'm honored to be here today with several members of our team to talk about community and the Asian American Pacific Islander community and how we can partner together to maintain a safe Pleasanton. Tonight would not be possible without a couple of folks who were instrumental in starting this conversation. So I'd like to thank a couple of community members. One, Winnie Liu, who reached out to Mayor Brown and asked us to have a conversation. And I think Mayor Brown is here online as a guest. And at this time, I'd like to introduce Mayor Brown and ask her to say just a quick few words about tonight's meeting. It looks like we're having some quick technical difficulties, so while we work through that, we have Mayor Brown on the line. Welcome, Mayor. It's glad to see you virtually, and welcome to our community meeting.
All right, thank you very much, and good evening. I am the Mayor of Pleasanton, and I am so proud to be here to welcome you to the Pleasanton Community Talks Safety Tips discussion. One of the things that makes Pleasanton a very special place is our Pleasanton Police Department. As you know, they are dedicated men and women that serve our community, and they service us 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Anytime we need help, they are here for us. So tonight you'll have the opportunity to hear firsthand from our crime prevention team ways we can all be more vigilant and learn ways to help prevention tips on how together we can keep our family and our community safe. So thank you for joining this evening, and I'm going to turn the meeting back over to our very capable and skillful Police Chief David Swing. Chief Swing, it's all yours.
Excellent. Thank you, Mayor. Thanks for joining us. Tonight's meeting is really designed to help increase the feeling of safety in our community. We know that Pleasanton is a safe town, and we enjoy the benefits of that safety. Yet, much like other areas, safety is something we can always work on. And we hope to do this tonight by strengthening communication channels and highlighting existing and new access points and ways that our community can engage with Pleasanton Police Department. We also know that by providing resources that will enhance awareness, both personal awareness and for your neighborhood, will also aid in increasing that feeling of safety. We know that there's been a recent focus on assaults from members of the Asian American Pacific Islander community, and that's both regionally, statewide, and nationally. And we're certainly we're hurt by that. I think as a region, as a city, as a larger community, we're all troubled by that. The strategies we're going to talk about tonight also apply across the board, not just to a specific community group, but to all members of our wonderful community here in Pleasanton. Another goal for this evening is to hear and acknowledge the concerns and to help provide answers to some questions that may be out there. We have a great team in place to help do that. We have Officer Ryan Tujay, who's our crime prevention officer. He's going to talk about the neighborhood watch and other crime prevention strategies. We have officers Archie Chu and Jonathan Chin, who are going to speak to police engagement and provide a patrol officer perspective. We also have a person crimes detective in Bradley Palmquist, who will talk about some of the recent cases that we've had here in Pleasanton and locally. Our social media and engagement coordinator, Terry Yan, will highlight our social media strategies and ways that our community can engage and learn more about what's happening here in Pleasanton. And also we have Deputy DA Sharon Carney. And DA Carney is our local filing DA for Pleasanton, and she's also a board member of the Asian American Prosecutors Association. And we're very glad and honored to have her here with us as well to talk about hate crimes and some of the current legislative efforts that are out there today. So I am really honored to be here. I'm honored to be your police chief and honored to present tonight's information and to have a very capable and engaged team that's going to provide some wonderful information to share. So with that, I'm going to sign off, and I'm going to turn it over to Officer Ryan Tujay.
Good evening, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us today. My name is Officer Ryan Tujay. As I prepare to share my screen with you here tonight, the first thing you're going to see that should pop up is my information. And I asked while I kind of give a little introduction to myself and who I am, if you can take your phone or if you have an iPad, screenshot my information, I would appreciate that, or take a photo of it. These are going to be the best ways to get a hold of me after tonight's meeting. If you have questions, or as I go through my presentation, I'm going to be talking about Neighborhood Watch, and ultimately what's called CPTED. I'll get into a little bit more about that later. But as I mentioned, I've worked for the City of Pleasanton Police Department, and I grew up in Pleasanton. My folks moved here in 1977. I went to Walnut Grove, Harvest Park, and Amador. And with that, I'm going to go ahead and move through. I hope my screen is being shared correctly. Yeah? Okay, good. Okay. Crime prevention, the crime prevention unit's mission is to foster feelings of safety, educate the public, reduce property loss and associated costs, improve quality of life, maintain property values, create positive relationships between the public and the police department, reduce fear, and attract economic development. I do have many things where I branch out to many parts of the community. I work with young children in grade school, and my biggest thing, as you see there, is education and outreach. I also do senior safety presentations, and let me see, is it on? Yeah, the screen shares on. Is that better? There we go. Okay, sorry about that. Technical difficulties. I do residential security, where I come to your home and I'll evaluate your property. I do CPTED evaluations for businesses and residential homes. And I do talks on stranger danger, personal security, stuff like that. As I mentioned, I'm going to be talking about Neighborhood Watch. Neighborhood Watch, the ultimate goal is you getting to know your neighbors. One of the biggest things that I have noticed in the community is that a lot of people don't know who their neighbors are. And I've always said this, when you invest in your neighbors will always invest in you. My job is to come in and educate and help train the residents of your court, street, or block to recognize what suspicious activities are. We're practicing prevention techniques aimed at reducing the risk of crime. And what it entails is also the neighborhood coming together a few times a year. One of the biggest events that the police department holds, along with other first responders, such as fire, the ambulances, CHP, we get together the first Tuesday of every August of every year, and it's called National Night Out. Hopefully, with how everything's trending down with COVID, we'll be able to do that this year, and I really look forward to getting back out there and connecting with the community. So hopefully we'll be able to do that August 3rd of this year. Part of my Neighborhood Watch is coming to your home and giving you a personalized security check of your residence. In this photo, you probably won't be able to see me because one of the issues with this particular residence is poor lighting. I also come in and provide tips on how you can trim your hedges down or trees and implement better lighting and security throughout your home. I talked specifically during Neighborhood Watch about cameras and the best kind of camera system you can get for your home that's affordable. One of the biggest issues that our detectives run into is you may have a security camera, but the quality may be too poor to use it in the apprehension of the suspect. I talk about how you can place those cameras around your home to make it the best security for your residents. I talk about alarm systems and how they can be implemented into your home and how they work well within your home and the benefit of security systems. And obviously I talk about specific locking mechanisms for your doors, windows, and other additional information that is beneficial to your home specifically. Neighborhood Watch works. It alert neighbors and communities have helped in decreasing burglary offenses by reporting suspicious activity to law enforcement. Neighborhood Watch helps build pride and serves as a springboard for efforts that address other community concerns. Neighborhood Watch is a group of neighbors who gather to discuss the needs, interests, and concerns of the neighborhood. It also builds relationships between the neighbors, as I mentioned before. One of the unique things about Neighborhood Watch is when I do come to your court, street, or block, I can get very specific information to your residents on the type of crimes that have occurred in and around your area. As I mentioned, crime prevention through environmental design, also known as CPTED. What it is natural surveillance. People and their activities can be naturally observed through lighting, landscaping, and windows. As I had commented earlier about brushes or trees being overgrown in your yard, what happens is it blocks your window, and if something were to occur out in front of your home, and you have a tree or a bush that's blocking that, it's going to obstruct what's going on, and you may not be able to get specific detail on the person or persons out in front committing criminal activity. It's territorial reinforcement defines areas, sense of ownership, landscaping, signage, and usage. With signage, by putting up signs such as beware of dog, or simple signage that you have video surveillance in your home will naturally deter crime. Access control, controlling entry into a site, locks, signs in and out, and fencing. That's more for our businesses so that people will know how to get to and from your business safely. And maintenance, as I mentioned about overgrown bushes and trees, crime prevention is a lifestyle, not a one-time effort. Additional kind of photos for you with the crime prevention through environmental design, CPTED. As you see here, you have on the left with the X, you have some overgrown bushes that can deter somebody, not deter, excuse me, it can hide somebody who may be trying to break into that car. So if you trim that bush down and remove it, it opens up the landscape so that people can use natural surveillance, which is just people walking in and out of the area that can see and potentially report criminal activity. And also with businesses, you can implement lighting to make it a safe area for people to come and walk through to and from your business. The lower left corner there shows signage for emergency exits and things like that. A bad sign is the one that you see in the middle with the overgrown trees. That is going to hide the business or your residence, which allows criminal activity or criminals to approach the home and be hidden from those bushes as they're standing at your front door. So what we want to do is we want to eliminate those tree branches, get them out of the way, and open that area up. In the lower right-hand corner, you see a residence there that is very well lit up. Criminals do not like light. They want to avoid light, and so when you add light, it takes away that element of them being able to hide on your property and look and peer into the windows. So when you implement lighting, it'll deter criminal activity. Now I'm going to talk a little bit about vehicle security. One of the biggest issues that we have in our town is we do have vehicle burglaries that happen quite frequently at our Stone Ridge Mall and other shopping locations. When you go to the gym, that's another big issue. So it is very important that you lock your car doors, secure your windows, and the old saying of either remove it or lose it. And to touch up on that a little bit, you know, when you show up to, let's say, the mall or the gym is a very good example. Criminals, we've had, you know, after we catch a criminal, we ask them, you know, what were you doing leading up to before you broke into the car? And they say they'll just sit in cars. And they'll watch people come and go from their cars. So when you show up to the gym, you get out of the driver's seat, you take your purse, you pop the trunk, you put the purse in the trunk, and the whole time the criminal's watching this. And then you go inside to go into the gym, and then what they do is they'll break in, open the door, pop the trunk, and steal your purse. So it's really important that you take things with you or just simply leave them at home. If you're going to the mall during the holiday season, that's a big opportunity for crime because criminals, again, like I said, will sit in their car and they will sit there and watch you come out with your items, and they'll watch you put them into your car. And they know exactly which car to go up to, which car to break into, and steal your stuff. When you go to these shopping centers at nighttime, park in well-lit areas. Try to stay away from parking near big overgrown bushes or trees because that causes concealment for the bad guy who breaks into your car. It's also important to know what your license plate is in case your car is stolen. So if you go into the mall and you come back outside, you know, and your car is missing, we're going to need to know your license plate. So that's going to be some important information for you to want to hold on to. I'm going to pass this video right now because I'm very limited on time. And a lot of this information that I'm providing to you tonight, as you know that tonight we have like a 2-hour presentation. Usually the presentations I give on Neighborhood Watch and CPTED and Business Watch is about 2 hours long. So this is essentially a Reader's Digest version of what I normally teach and educate. With personal safety, always be aware of your surroundings. A lot of times when I'm on patrol driving around, I go into the sports park, I'll see people on their phones while they're walking. I understand you're getting your exercise, that's awesome, that's great, but I need you guys to be aware of what's going on around you. Know who's approaching you. You got to remember to look over your shoulder, make sure nobody's following you. And know that it's really important, strength in numbers. Always try and find a walking or exercise partner, or if you're going out shopping, try and bring somebody with you. Always keep one hand free. Be prepared. If somebody does attack you, it is important to scream, get as loud as possible, and obviously fight back if you can. I'm always going to recommend soft targets such as eyes, nose, or throat, and groin is also another good soft target area. Yeah, so that's, you know, it's important to protect yourself, but also understand if that's not like the person you are or who you are, that's okay. Your property can always be replaced, so it's important that, you know, property can be replaced, and maybe you don't want to fight back. That's okay. Now, when reporting suspicious activity, if you're at home or you're out and about going to and from shopping centers or out doing errands, when you get out of your car, you know, looking into car, you know, if you're out and you see somebody looking into car windows or trying door handles, or looking around your neighborhood over a neighbor's fence, that's a big clue that somebody is up to some suspicious activity. So we're going to ask that you give us a call at our non-emergency number, which is 925-931-5100. That number is going to pop up here again in a second. If you see somebody in your residential neighborhood sitting in a parked car for an extended period of time, that's important. Give us a call. If you see somebody jumping fences or running with property in a residential neighborhood, give us a call. That's important. Know who to call and what to report. So when you call the police department to report suspicious activity or a suspicious vehicle, the biggest things we want to know is, you know, what's their gender, their ethnicity, what they're wearing, and the direction of travel in which they're going. If you're unfamiliar, try and use major landmarks. They were running towards West Las Casitas. They were running towards Valley Avenue. They were running towards Stone Ridge Drive, or the car was last seen going to onto Foothill Road. We're going to need that information. So it's always important to know clothing description, gender, and ethnicity, and direction of travel. And if you can get us license plates on vehicles, that is really, really important for us because we can always follow up if we're unable to locate the vehicle. If it looks suspicious, please report it. One of the biggest frustrations as a police officer is people will often say to me, you know what, I didn't want to bother you guys. I beg you, I implore you, please bug us. This is what you pay us to do. This is what we do for our community. This is our job. So when you call us and give us the information, you know, we're going to send somebody out there. A lot of times we show up and the bad guy or suspect or somebody who's doing suspicious activity will more than times move along because they see the police just driving through the area. We would rather go and check it out and check out the suspicious activity at the time when it's still fresh, not hours later. Sometimes a mere presence, like I said, will prevent other crimes from occurring. Another big thing that we see in Pleasanton is identity theft. Identity theft occurs when someone uses your personal identifying information without your permission to commit fraud or other crimes. Your name, social security number, and credit card information are highly sought after by criminals. They use this information to open accounts, make purchases, and withdraw money. When you may not find out until it's already occurred and you get a call from your credit card or an email that states your account's been overdrafted. While some victims can resolve their problems quickly, others must spend their own time and money to repair the damage of their good name and credits records. The Pleasanton Police Department does investigate identity theft where goods or services were obtained within the city limits of Pleasanton. If your information was used somewhere else, we will take the report for you here in Pleasanton, but we will forward the follow-up investigation to the proper jurisdiction where your information was compromised and or used. It is the responsibility of the law enforcement agency to investigate the identity theft that occurs within their jurisdiction. Some of the biggest scams that we're seeing are happening every day. The most common one we hear about is overpayment scams. As an example, what happened was we had a resident of our community who sold a bed, and the suspect gave them they sold a bed for $500, and the suspect gave them a check for $2,000. When they called him back and said, hey, you gave me too much money, the victim at that point told them, or the suspect at that point told them to go ahead and, just transfer the money into my account and give it to me that way. What happens is the check they gave you was a bad check. We hear a lot about PG&E getting, our residents getting calls from PG&E stating that they own money, and if they don't pay it right now, they'll shut their power off right away. You'll hear sometimes suspects will say you can make payments through Target gift cards, Walmart gift cards, and last time I checked, PG&E doesn't accept gift cards as payment. So that's very important. If you hear something where someone asks to give payment in the form of Target or Amazon or Walmart. Another big scam that we've seen in Pleasanton is romance scammers. They'll create fake profiles and dating sites, apps, and contact people through social media sites such as Instagram, Facebook, and Google. The scammers will strike up a relationship with you. They'll know a little bit about your information because a lot of everybody's information is out there through social media. And as time goes on, you'll exchange phone numbers and you'll start calling each other. And then they'll make up a story where they're in need of money. Another story that happened here in Pleasanton is one of our residents was scammed out of a couple $100,000 from somebody who claimed to be a veteran for the United States, and ultimately scammed them out of a large amount of money because they claimed that they were involved in an injury and they needed money to get back home, or needed money. Another common thing is oh, can you help pay for my plane ticket and I'll come out and see you, and they end up just taking your money, so you need to be aware of that. My final part of my presentation is anytime, a lot of people don't know about this, anytime that you are selling something such as in Facebook Market or Craigslist, or you're just selling it, and you go to this person will tell you, oh, I'll come to your house, or we can meet in the parking lot at a bank. Always come to the police department. As an example, a few weeks ago, I purchased a PS5, PlayStation 5, and my only requirement was that the seller meet me at the police station. And so we have special areas at our police department called the exchange zone that's well lit and has security cameras for your safety and their safety. If somebody doesn't want to meet you at the police department, that's probably a red flag, and just move on and sell it to somebody else or buy from somebody else. Thank you so much for your guys' time. The next person I'm going to introduce is Officer Archie Chu and Jonathan Chin. They're going to answer, tell you about the AAPI Community Partnership. One of the questions that were submitted to the, let me turn off my share screen here. One of the questions that were submitted to our pre-question submission was what concrete steps are being taken by the Pleasanton Police Department to understand the Asian American challenges, cultures, and perspectives. So without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and introduce to you Jonathan Chin and Archie Chu.
Hi, good evening. My name is Officer Archie Chu. I'm a patrol officer here at Pleasanton. The quick answer to that question is that we don't have anything directly channeled towards the Asian Pacific Islander community right now. We have in the past have had very successful citizens academies where we reach out to the residents of Pleasanton and invite them into the police department for 12, 14 weeks at a time so they can meet with the officers and learn about the agency and how we go about doing business on a daily basis. However, we are aware of the needs of the city and its residents. So this event tonight is actually a response to that need. And so we're trying to do what we can to not only speak to the residents of Pleasanton, but also directly to the Asian Pacific Islander community. Another channel that we're starting is the Community Advisory Board, and that's going to be meeting very soon, and there's more information available to you on our website. However, that is, again, in response to the needs and the requests of the residents of Pleasanton and how we can better service our community.
So I'm Officer Chin with the Pleasanton Police Department. I'm going to talk about how on a daily patrol duty, how a call for service comes in. Typically they come in one of two ways, either self-generated as an enforcement contact or it can be a call for service. If it's an enforcement contact, typically we're contacting somebody to speak to them regarding possibly jaywalking or littering. It could also be if we're contacted by someone from the public to talk to us about an issue that they may have or just to talk to us on a daily basis. The other form would be a call for service. So that is generated from you, the community, calling the police department because of some of the issues that Officer Tuje discussed earlier. As he stated, the importance of those are providing as much detail as you can so that we can deal with the call for service as needed. The details are really important for us so that we know what type of response we need, how many officers we may need, and if anyone's safety might be in trouble, so that we can help them as fast as we can. Those contacts either can go from an enforcement contact or it can go to education-based contact as well. While we have the law to enforce, we also hopefully can provide information, education to the people that we're serving in the community as well. Those can go anywhere from pointing you towards different resources that may help you, or different resources within our police department, different resources within the county, within the state. Hopefully we can direct you towards the right place.
Perfect. So just as a quick reminder, you can submit questions into the chat box, and we will be accepting those questions all the way up till about 7:15 tonight. So if you have a question that is specific to one of us talking tonight, please go ahead and throw the question in there, and hopefully, time permitting, we'll be able to go ahead and answer those questions. Up next, we have investigations, Detective Brad Palmquist. He's going to go over a few different roles as a detective, how they do review cases and gather further evidence. There was a question that came up about security cameras. He's going to address that. So I'm going to, without further ado, I'll go ahead and pass it over to Detective Brad Palmquist.
Thank you, Ryan. Good evening. Thank you all for being here. My name is Detective Brad Palmquist. I am part of our criminal investigation unit, which is comprised of 6 detectives and a detective sergeant. So the role of the detective at the Pleasanton Police Department is to review the majority of our criminal cases which come into our department. We read through those cases and we evaluate them, and we look for additional evidence which we can possibly obtain through DNA, fingerprints, video evidence, and possibly witness statements. We look to identify unknown suspects in these cases, and we look to build stronger cases when a suspect has been identified. We then either make an arrest in that case or we submit the case for charging to the district attorney's office. Throughout this process, we are the primary contact for the victims, and we strive to keep them up to date on the status of their case and provide them with any assistance that we can. A case of recent interest is a robbery which occurred on April 10th. Our department has made several arrests in this case, but the case has not yet completely worked through the court system, so I cannot go into specifics about it. However, I can share that 2 individuals were robbed by 3 suspects while in the driveway of their residence. While Pleasanton patrol officers were gathering the facts of the case, the victims informed the officers that their stolen credit cards were being used in a neighboring city. Pleasanton police officers relayed this information and the suspect descriptions to that jurisdiction, who quickly located the suspects and detained them. Without the victims providing this key information, this case may not be solved. To this point, no information has been obtained that the victims were targeted due to their race. Next, I would like to bring up a new piece of technology we have begun using, and that is a program called the Axon Citizen Program. This program is managed by detectives, and it enables us to send a link to citizens or anyone who may have video evidence to provide that we feel could be evidentiary in a case. So we can email a link to the camera owner, who then can upload the camera footage directly to the detective, and then it'll get reviewed by us and it'll get stored in evidence to be used in any cases we can use it in. So please be familiar with how to operate your camera systems. I know that a main concern for us is obtaining video footage in a timely manner due to the fact that we know video is commonly erased within several days of it being captured due to the limitations of storage. In my time as a detective, I have found that the more information that victims and witnesses can provide, it rather highly increases the chances of us solving that crime. And that is our goal, is to solve every case and hopefully get any items we can back for victims or assist in a positive outcome in the case in any way we can. So with that, I'll turn it back over to Ryan. Thank you so much.
Okay, very good, thank you. So next we have Sharon Carney, who is with the Alameda County District Attorney's Office. Sharon is also a board member of the Asian American Prosecutors Association. Sharon's going to go ahead and be discussing some of the elements of hate crimes, what the DA's office does to help victims, the available resources to assist those affected. And without further ado, Sharon Carney.
Hello, everyone. My name is Sharon Carney. I am currently the charging DA for the Pleasanton Police Department at the East County Courthouse. And as Ryan mentioned, I do sit on the board of the Asian American Prosecutors Association. These past few months, we've been doing a lot of community outreach, trying to address questions about hate crimes and educate the community about the elements and the kind of details that investigating agencies would need in order for the DA's office to prosecute those sorts of cases. So I'm going to go over right now the elements of a hate crime. I'm going to share my screen. And there we go. So hate crimes are actually defined in the Penal Code. So a hate crime is defined in the Penal Code as an act which is motivated in whole or in part because of one of these several elements that are listed here below. It's a crime that's motivated either by a person's disability, gender, nationality, race or ethnicity, religion, or sexual orientation. We highlight that part about it being in whole or in part because the law doesn't require that the entire reason or motivation for that crime to be committed was because of one of these characteristics. It only requires that that be one of the reasons why the crime was committed or why that victim was chosen. The law defines this as a person's bias. Now, bias can be a difficult thing to prove when it comes to these sorts of cases. The law doesn't require, as I said, that that be the entire motivation behind the crime, but we do have to prove that that was one of the reasons. And when we talk about proving this in a court of law, what you have to remember is that the standard of proof is proof beyond a reasonable doubt. And that means that we have to prove to a jury of 12 people, all 12, that the motivation behind this crime was that the perpetrator was motivated because of the victim, one of those perceived characteristics of the victim. So it's very important that in terms of investigations, that the officers are able to gather evidence establishing this bias. That evidence can come in the form of either the perpetrator has a history of similar attacks against similar victims. It can come from the nature of how the crime occurred, for instance, where it occurred, if it occurred at a cultural event, if it occurred in, say, a church or at a religious gathering. Those are the sorts of things that we're looking at to find out if we can prove this bias. When establishing this bias, it's important that we establish, were there any statements from the defendant before or during or after the crime that would show this bias, their motivation for committing the crime. There can also be, because there is no other reason, a complete absence of any other motivation for the crime, but for one of these perceived characteristics. That can also serve as proof that this is a hate crime. We can, at times, look to see if this person has a history of this sort of behavior, and that may be something that is admissible in court to establish that this crime that we're investigating, trying to charge and trying to prosecute, was also motivated because of this perceived bias. And again, pattern of conduct, if there are any other crimes that this person has committed that are similar, other victims of similar backgrounds, that may be evidence that is also admissible to establish that this was a hate crime. We are at times, not always, but at times able to look at someone's social media accounts, their behavior in those forums, to gather evidence to establish whether or not the crime, again, was motivated by this bias. Now, I bring this up because there's always questions in the media. People see news stories about an incident that occurred, and they'll ask, was that a hate crime? I hope that nobody here is ever the victim of a hate crime. You may be at some point a witness to something. And now you understand what some of the elements are and the things that we're looking for in order to charge these crimes, and that the standard of proof for these crimes is beyond a reasonable doubt. Should you ever find yourself in a situation where you are a witness to something, it is important that when you're interacting with law enforcement officers who are investigating the crime, that you give them any information you can. It may be something you heard the suspect say before the incident occurred, or something that they said afterward. Maybe it's statements they said to people within the crowd or someone they were with. It could be clothing worn by the suspect, or a bumper sticker on a car. These are the sorts of things that, in the excitement of the moment or stress of the moment, a witness may forget to mention to officers or may not think that those are important. But when you're talking about a hate crime, where we're looking for these details to establish what the perpetrator was thinking, because that is what serves as the basis of these crimes, what they're thinking, what their motivation was, that sort of information is critical. And it may be the sort of information that you don't remember until days later, but it is still important for you then to relay that to law enforcement, because that is going to help us determine what is truly happening in that situation and what charges are appropriate. And so there are several statutes that deal with hate crimes and how they're charged in California. Okay? When we're talking about felony hate crimes, the way that they're commonly charged is we have something called a hate crime felony allegation, also known as an enhancement. And what this means is, for instance, if there was a robbery that we believe was motivated based upon one of these different biases, that it qualifies as a hate crime. The way that it is charged is the robbery is charged, and then an additional enhancement is also charged. What that means is, if we can establish that the robbery was motivated due to the suspect's perception of the victim's race, ethnicity, religion, or one of those categories, if we can prove that beyond a reasonable doubt, then this enhancement adds additional punishment to that underlying felony crime. Now, if for some reason a jury does not find beyond a reasonable doubt that this hate crime allegation was proven, they can still convict on that underlying felony. Okay. But as you can see, there are several different types of allegations which will add on different amounts of additional time for possible sentencing by a judge after a person is convicted. The hate crime allegation, what this will do also is if it's found to be true by a jury, it means that if the person is sentenced to prison, they must serve that time within a state prison, not local prison. Local prison is the county jail. There are also several hate crimes misdemeanor crimes. These are different in that they really focus upon interference with a person's constitutional rights. Okay? There are several of these. They're very broadly worded. A misdemeanor is the maximum penalty of a year for a misdemeanor conviction. But as you can see, there are several. A lot of them have to do with threats that are made interfering with a person's free exercise of their rights. However, we still have to prove the same elements that I explained before in terms of the definition of what a hate crime is, and that it was motivated based upon one of those several factors. Okay. There is, and some people are familiar with this, something called criminal threats. When you threaten somebody's safety, that is a crime. The hate crime misdemeanors are a little different in that it doesn't require the same level of fear or sustained fear that the criminal threat statutes require. So that's how it's different. And it also is in this focus of really interfering with someone's free exercise of their rights. We have some statutes that deal with specific conduct, painting a noose, terrorizing symbols, disturbing religious meetings, which also try to encompass these different behaviors, and they can be charged as well or along with other hate crime statutes. Okay? In terms of the district attorney's office and how we help the victims of these sorts of crimes, we have within our office something called a victim witness advocate program. These are individuals who work in our office and are assigned to work different cases and help the victims of crime navigate the system, meaning we offer them information about court dates, they help them with things like transportation, and there are circumstances as well where the victims may need counseling. There may be hospital bills from injury. In that situation, the state has something called the Victim Compensation Fund, which is there to help victims with these sorts of issues. But the victim witness advocates within our office help the victims navigate that paperwork, give them information, and follow up with them just to make sure that they're doing okay, to answer whatever questions they have, and set up meetings with the DAs who are assigned to prosecute those cases. So there is also the option of getting protective orders when necessary in those cases after conviction. And those are the sorts of services that we offer. But this last part here of the slide is what I want to address, because this question does come up a lot, and this is what we hear from the community, is that oftentimes people who are victims or witnesses of these crimes, they're afraid of possible immigration issues, or there's the concern that someone may ask about that. And what we want people to understand, no one here is asking about your immigration status. Nowhere in this process, when someone's a victim of a crime or a witness to a crime, do we ask about that. That's not what law enforcement is doing when they're investigating these crimes. It's not what we're doing when we're prosecuting these crimes. We're here to make the community safer and to help people who've been through some pretty horrible experiences. And no one is focusing on that. So if that shouldn't be your concern, should you be the victim of one of these crimes or you're a witness to these crimes, please do reach out to law enforcement, report what has happened and what you have seen. So another question that has come up along with hate crimes at our events has been questions about SB 82. This is a new piece of proposed legislation that has to do with robberies and the modification or changing of the petty theft law. So currently, there is misdemeanor petty theft, and we also have robbery, which is a felony. Robberies are defined as the taking from the immediate presence of a person through force or fear or threats or violence. Okay. And that's what's key here is this phrase accomplished by means of force or fear. A felony robbery is something that's called it falls under the category of a strike offense in California. Okay? What that means is if you're convicted of a robbery in the future, if you commit another felony offense, it could expose you to greater penalties or greater time in prison. It also requires that you spend your time or serve any prison sentence in an actual state prison, not locally at a county facility. Okay? There's other enhancements that could be added on if you're charged with a 211 or a robbery. For instance, if you cause injury to a victim, then the penalty is greater. If you use a weapon, like a knife or a gun, the penalties on robbery are also greater. If you're convicted of a robbery, you get a probation officer. If you go to prison, you have a parole officer. Those are all things that happen right now. That's the current state of the law. SB 82 has been proposed by Nancy Skinner. It would seek to alter the petty theft laws in 3 categories that affects the way that robberies are now charged and worded. It would essentially downgrade many of the robberies into misdemeanor petty theft. So any robbery in which a deadly weapon was not used or where the victim did not suffer serious injury would fall under the category of a misdemeanor petty theft. SB 82, the way that it is worded, would also seem to apply retroactively, meaning individuals who have already been convicted of a robbery, that conviction would then become a misdemeanor if it falls within this category of a robbery that was committed without a deadly weapon and where the victim did not suffer great bodily injury. So it would break it down into first-degree petty theft and second-degree petty theft. First-degree petty theft would then be defined as theft using force or fear, where the amount of the item stolen or the value of the item stolen was under $950, and where the victim did not suffer great bodily injury and a weapon was not used. All other petty thefts would then fall under the category of a second-degree petty theft. Now, you'll see in Category 3 it says grand theft. The way that the law is now is we already have something called misdemeanor petty theft. There is another offense called grand theft under Penal Code Section 487, which deals with thefts in which force or fear was not used. So there is already a crime, a specific penal code for that category of theft. But this new legislation would really center upon the perpetrator's use of a weapon and any consequences that fall upon the victim. It would require that there was actual infliction of great bodily injury. And I say that term, that is a legal term. Not every injury falls under the definition of great bodily injury. We're talking about things like broken bones, stitches, loss of consciousness, coma, possibly death. That's generally great bodily injury. Bruising, swelling, pain does not qualify as great bodily injury. There is actually case law out there that talks about the fracture of a nose is not great bodily injury. So we're talking about robbery only encompassing those injuries that are serious and significant. So if a victim suffers swelling, bruising, pain to a shoulder because they've been pushed down, that would still qualify as a petty theft. The consequences of this also means that by becoming a misdemeanor, robbery where there is no weapon or great bodily injury to the victim would fall under, they would no longer be strike offenses. They would face up to a year in county jail. That would be the maximum penalty. There is no formal probation, no probation officers, and then the standard fees, which is common for a misdemeanor, are up to $1,000 Whether or not those are actually, whether or not they're actually sentenced to that or have to pay that is up to the judge. So the difference here that we're talking about, the statute really hits upon, is the idea of the human element. We talk about force or fear, and some people don't understand the kind of implications that a 211 has on the community or on the victim. And the example that I often use so that people understand how much this legislation can change what's happening or the kind of impact it will have is I use the example of an individual riding a BART train. So you can picture someone sitting on BART, they have a backpack next to them, they're not paying attention, somebody runs by, grabs the backpack, runs off the train. That's a petty theft. And in that situation, the victim may be angry. They might even run after the person who's stolen their item out of anger and frustration. That victim may talk about that situation with friends, may change how they behave on the BART by keeping their property closer to them, may pay greater attention to their surroundings so that that doesn't happen again. But if you change that scenario so that that individual is now holding that backpack in his lap, they're approached by somebody who lifts up a fist and says, "Give me that backpack," that's the difference. This victim now has had fear, the threat of force, and will most likely give over that backpack because it has been communicated to them that if they don't, they're going to be hurt. And the impact that that kind of crime has is there's much more mental trauma that occurs. And from what we've seen in dealing with victims of these sorts of crimes is they oftentimes change things in their life that create financial difficulties to themselves. They may no longer take BART. They may alter how they get to work at great expense themselves, taking different bus routes or asking friends for rides. That person will have a fear now of going on BART. It may change other behaviors in their life in terms of areas of town they may not go to, restaurants, stores and things they may not frequent or go out at certain times of day because they've lost that sense of safety. So this is what we're talking about in terms of the changes that SB 82, the kind of impact that it could have on the community. There's also concern because it would essentially make the most vulnerable people in our community the easiest targets. Because certainly those people who are more vulnerable are the easiest ones to threaten or to put in a position of fear without the use of a weapon. And so that's our concern here, and that is what we're hoping everybody understands about SB 82. Thank you.
All right, guys, thank you so much, Sharon. As I mentioned earlier, I'd just like to touch upon it again. Please feel free to ask questions in the chat box. Your name won't pop up, so just ask any questions, and we'll have someone on our panel answer the questions that you have. Our next presenter will be our very own Terry Yan. She is our social media expert for the Pleasanton Police Department. She's going to discuss how we use to receive messages from the public and how we get our messaging out to the public. She's going to discuss the annual report, Citizen Connect, and also give a quick tutorial on how to sign up for Alameda County Alert, also known as AC Alert, and how it works. So without further ado, Terry Yan.
Hi everyone, I'm Terry, and I help with Pleasanton PD social media. And just give me a moment so I can share my screen. Okay, so to dive into how you can stay educated and engaged, there are 4 main resources that can be found at www.pleasantonpd.org. Hold on a second. All right, so first I want to share how you can familiarize yourself with our department, its history, and overall performance. For those who don't already know, the Pleasanton PD publishes an annual report every year, and we started this practice back in 2011. The annual report highlights data on crime, arrests, traffic citations, and different units in our department. Though our 2020 annual report isn't quite ready yet, it will be published in the coming weeks, and this is a great resource for our community to check out. For those of you who might want more information about specific crimes around town, you can check out our crime mapping software, which has been available to the public for roughly the past 10 years. It was recently upgraded to allow more customization and ease of use. So there you see it right there, our crime mapping link on www.pleasantonpd.org. We call this Citizen Connect, and we believe this is an important way for our community to stay informed. If you're curious about a recent incident that was reported in your neighborhood, go to our crime mapping software, Citizen Connect. Moving on, as to how you can get up-to-date information on what's happening at Pleasanton PD, whether it's behind the scenes or out in the community, or if you even want to learn more about us as individuals, we encourage community members to follow us on social media, right down there in the left-hand corner. We have accounts on Nextdoor, Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. Our handles for Twitter and Instagram are @PleasantonPD. For Facebook, it's actually Pleasanton Police, capital CA. If you end up following Pleasanton PD on Facebook, you actually would be following the Pleasanton PD in Texas, not here in California. So please keep that in mind. For us, Facebook, it's Pleasanton Police CA. These platforms have been a tremendous resource for the community and for us, especially when our city experienced threats of looting last year. We really have to hand it to our citizens who shared screenshots with us on social media. And it was because of the information they sent us that we were able to respond and prepare with greater efficiency. Our social media audience has been incredibly supportive, and we appreciate how much our community members engage with us. It's also important to remind everyone that reports cannot be filed through social media. To file a formal report for something such as lost or stolen property, we ask that you go to our online reporting system or simply call us at 925-931-5100 or call 911 for emergencies. Finally, one last suggestion to our community is to sign up for AC Alert. To repeat their slogan, if we can't reach you, then we can't alert you. AC Alert is an emergency alert system that allows us to either text, call, or email you directly in case of emergencies. So if there was a situation where a major roadway was closed off to traffic, we would be able to send you a text alert to inform you of which streets to avoid. Another example would be if there was a threat on campus or a natural disaster, and our first responders would need to immediately evacuate the area and send you a text to let you know. So we encourage you to sign up for AC Alert and register your phone number so we can alert you of any emergency situations in the area. For those of you joining us tonight, if you would like to suggest any resources, services, or platforms that might better serve your needs, please feel free to reach out to us, or you can email me directly at tan@cityofpleasantonca.gov. Thank you.
Awesome, thank you so much, Terry. So now we're going to go ahead and open up some of the questions, and we're going to have Lieutenant Brandon Stocking read off some of the questions. We're not going to use the names of who asked the questions, but we're going to go ahead and answer those questions as we move along. So.
Yes, thank you, Ryan. The first question is actually for you, and it's if citizens want to receive a copy of your PowerPoint presentation on crime prevention, can they, and if so, how?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, thank you for that. Yeah, I will go ahead and offer my PowerPoint presentation. I saw that question pop up in the chat box, and I think your email went in there, but absolutely, I'll get that to you tonight or tomorrow morning. So that would definitely be able to do that. Thank you.
And we've actually had a couple questions about this. This question is for Detective Palmquist. There were a couple questions about home surveillance systems and whether residents can register their cameras so that Pleasanton PD can know who has surveillance cameras if they want to help out with an investigation.
Yes, that's definitely a great question. We currently do not have that program running. However, we are in the process of implementing it. The program is going to be called My Civic, and basically it will be a voluntary database where citizens in our community can register their cameras with us, letting us know their address and the cameras they have, and which will be a resource for us as detectives to use to check crime scenes and see if there were any cameras in the area. But just to let you know what kind of currently is in place, our patrol officers, when they're at a crime scene, they check any surrounding businesses or residents to see if they have any obvious cameras, and they'll make a notation of that in their police report. And if there are cameras, they'll do their best to obtain that footage immediately. If for whatever reason they're unable to, then a detective will do the follow-up work and try to get that camera footage. We're very aware of the limited time frame we have to get most footage before it gets recorded over, so we definitely handle that with a very high sense of urgency. And I'm sure once My Civic is ready to be released, it will be highly publicized through social media by Terry.
Thank you, Detective Palmquist. Our final question does go back to Officer 2J, but maybe Detective Palmquist may want to chime in on it as well. The question is, can you speak about catalytic converter thefts?
Yeah, that has been a big issue since COVID-19 happened, because everybody was sheltering in place and a lot of people weren't going to work and working from home, and you may not have been using your car as much. And what happens is when you do go out to use your car, you start it up, and all of a sudden your Toyota Prius sounds like a Harley motorcycle. You hear a very loud rumbling underneath your car. It usually scares the owner of the vehicle. And unfortunately, what is happening is Toyota Priuses, Hondas, Ford pickups have been targeted specifically. And what the suspects are going after in the catalytic converters is the precious metals that are inside. And what they do is they'll slide underneath the car, they'll use a sawzall and cut the catalytic converter out. There are several ways to help deter this crime. One thing you can do is you can go down to a muffler shop and you can have them install rebar, and they weld on rebar underneath the catalytic converter and along it, so they can't use a sawzall to cut through it. Another thing you can do is you can also go to a muffler shop and they can etch in the license plate number to the vehicle on the catalytic converter, or you can use a driver's license number or a phone number. So when they go to turn it in, they're going to have to either present a driver's license that has to match the catalytic converter. They'll call the phone number that may be etched into the catalytic converter and find out that, no, you've had yours stolen. So that's one of the things. The biggest issue with catalytic converters is the person can make, when they go to recycle it, anywhere from $500 to $1,000, but it costs you, the owner of the catalytic converter or the car that it was once attached to, anywhere from $3,000 to $5,000. Several cars have two of them, and so it can be expensive. And the unfortunate part about it is the suspect already knew where to get it once, and a lot of times, sometimes we have people that become victims twice because they go back. They don't put any preventative measures on the catalytic converter. That's why it's important to get maybe your catalytic converter, have a rebar welded to it, or a locking mechanism that goes around it so they can't cut through it. So great question, and it's been a huge issue, not only for us locally, but also nationally. Statistic rates on catalytic converter thefts have just absolutely skyrocketed. So thank you for that question.
Thank you, Ryan. We did have another question submitted, and the question is, how does the Pleasanton Police Department communicate with non-English speaking victims? And I'm going to hand this over to Officer Archie Chu.
Okay, so if a citizen who is a non-English speaker calls 911 or the non-emergency line, the first thing dispatch will do is try to identify the language that's being spoken and then offer a translation line. We have those services available through a third-party interpreter. They'll try to get the necessary information to create a call for service. Out on the street, if there is a specific language that's required and there is an officer or a CSO that's available that speaks that language, then that officer or CSO will be sent to the call. Currently, we have some Spanish speakers. I speak Mandarin. I believe we have some other languages available as well. In a pinch, we can always use a family member or a friend who can do the translating on scene, and that's available as well. Otherwise, officers do have department-issued cell phones where they can call for for a third-party interpreter and use that language line to ask questions and to perform interviews.
Thank you, Archie. We did just have one more question submitted, and I'll read it, and we'll get it to Officer Ryan too, Jay. Can you please describe the process whereby and how each of your positions view, act on, and collaborate with each other and our citizens to deal with the ongoing use of alcohol and other recreational drugs open in our community? What options are there? Thank you.
Great question. And I used to be on the Special Enforcement Unit, which was our undercover drug team. We get a lot of these phone calls every day. Open alcohol is not permitted within the city. Some cities do allow open alcohol during events. Currently, right now, with our downtown closure on Mondays, Saturdays, and Sundays, even though it's closed to vehicle traffic, and it's open for just pedestrians and bicyclists, people think they can walk around with alcohol, and unfortunately that's not the case. You know, you can't have open containers with alcohol. Another issue that we see because of the legalization of marijuana and marijuana usage, now anybody and everybody can use marijuana, but a city has passed a Pleasanton Municipal Code where you cannot smoke or use marijuana in the downtown area anytime that we have a downtown event. Apartment complexes do not allow it within their apartment complexes. And so we kind of run into that issue of will people go out and maybe smoke it on the sidewalk. You can call. The age is 21 and older, similar as alcohol. If you see someone smoking marijuana, there's really not much as far as we can do. We can go out and talk to them and just educate them a little bit and have a conversation, again, showing up, you know, and you know, have a conversation with them. And then also with alcohol use, if you go down, again, to our parks with softball or soccer events that are going on, and you see somebody drinking in an open container, that is not allowed as well. You know, these do still fall under suspicious activity, and so we do ask that you do call it in because we do want to go out there and have a conversation and just educate our public on what the do's and don'ts are and what's allowed and what's not allowed to do in the public. So thank you for that question.
Thank you, Ryan. We've got one more question. Are there any plans for the Citizens Academy to return to Pleasanton PD? So we're going to have Terry Ann respond to this.
Hi, everyone. Yes, there are plans to have the Citizens Academy back up and running. We are still evaluating safety protocols to make sure it's safe for everyone to join us again in the future. So thank you for asking that question.
And Terry, you might just stay on the screen because we have another one for you. Does PPD monitor WeChat?
Okay. At the moment, we do not monitor WeChat. We do have a network of crime analysts who will occasionally see things or be given information, and then they'll pass it along. But we ourselves do not monitor it personally or professionally within this department.
Thanks, Terry. Another question for Officer 2J. Is it safe to report hate crime-related violence if you are undocumented?
Yeah, thank you so much for that question. That is a question that isn't, I mean, it's not really asked, and we always want to tell people, as far as if you're undocumented and there's a crime, there's a big fear out there in the public of somebody who may be an illegal immigrant, and they're afraid to call the police because they're afraid that maybe, you know, they'll be taken away just because of their undocumented status. Well, the reality is, as police officers in California, we cannot work with ICE and turn people in who are undocumented. We always encourage everybody, it doesn't matter what your status is, if you're a victim of a crime, please, please, absolutely, give us a call. Another thing is culturally, sometimes you may feel like it's embarrassing for the police to show up to your house, so you're not going to call and report the crime. Understand, if you do want to report a crime as well, you could always remain anonymous. That's always important. You know, you don't have to give your information up if you want to report a crime. So again, thank you for that question. Yeah, it's a great question.
Thank you, Ryan. We also have Deputy District Attorney Sharon Carney would like to chime in on this.
And I just wanted to emphasize what Ryan said. We're actually prohibited from even asking that by various laws on the book. So that question's never asked what your immigration status is at any time during prosecution. In fact, depending upon the sorts of crimes, for things like domestic violence and other crimes where victims may be afraid to report, not only because of their immigration status, but because of their immigration status, they are dependent upon the support of someone who is abusing them or harming them in some way, that actually our office is able to help them with their immigration status in terms of certain visas and such. So your immigration status should never prohibit you from or keep you from in any way reporting a crime that you've either witnessed or a crime that you have been a victim of. And there is no communication with immigration offices or with ICE in any way.
Thank you so much, Sharon. The final question is, how can you share this presentation with your neighbors? And I will share that this presentation will be available on YouTube, on the Pleasanton PD YouTube channel, and we'll have it available there. It was broadcast live tonight, and everything we do will be available on the YouTube channel. That being said, and the questions just keep coming in. Is it legal for someone to dig through neighborhood trash bins? Is it illegal for someone to dig through neighborhood trash bins when they're placed on the curb and for trash pickup? From time to time, we see people doing that in our neighborhood. Is it legal?
I'll answer that question. That comes up quite a bit during the time for when your trash is going to be out the next day. So the law states the moment you take your trash receptacles, whether it be recyclable, trash, whatever, and you take it from your backyard, side yard, near the gate, on your property physically, and you push it out to the roadway or near the sidewalk, you relinquish all control of it. So it does become, people can go through the trash, and there is no crime, again, for somebody to go through your trash. I know it happens quite a bit in the residential neighborhood. I understand it can be extremely frustrating as a resident. My recommendation to deter that would be to leave your trash on your property and know the time of when the Pleasanton Garbage Company is going to come by and pick up the trash. Have a kind of like an estimated time. You're never going to know specifically what time they're going to show up, but move it out as the time approaches, when you know they show up at around 7 in the morning, 7:15 in the morning, or you go out and put it out as you're going to work in the morning. So that would be my recommendation. With that, I'm going to go ahead and pass it off back to Chief Swing. Thank you so much for joining us, Chief.
Excellent. Thanks, Ryan. Appreciate that. Virtual round of applause for all of our panelists tonight, and certainly much heartfelt thanks for their work and information provided. I want to just, in closing this out, I want to just touch on a couple of quick things. We recognize that a healthy police-community relationship is critical to a vibrant Pleasanton. It's critical to the success of our police department, and it's critical to helping to ensure safety for our community. And we certainly recognize that and appreciate the honor that we have to serve. There's a couple things that we can do together to maintain that relationship and build it, make it even stronger. It centers around getting involved with PPD, learning more about our Chiefs Advisory Board or our Community Advisory Board that's going to kick off here in the next couple months. I think recruitment starts actually this week. Additionally, we have our Explorer program for young people. We have our Citizens Police Academy that others have mentioned here as well. It's going to be starting up shortly. Our department, someone talked about the need to have multilingual officers or staff who speak multiple languages or languages other than English. We accomplish diversity in our department through our community. And what I mean by that is I want to encourage folks to really considering a career in law enforcement. Our profession needs the best and the brightest to serve their community. And so if you know of someone, if you have some young people in your house, if you are interested yourself in becoming a police officer or a dispatcher or working in our records department, consider that, because we need, again, the best and the brightest to serve our community, and that also is accomplished by having a diverse team. Someone touched on the issues of drugs and alcohol, and Officer 2J answered that wonderfully. Again, if you see something, say something. We have a very proactive culture here at the Pleasanton Police Department, and we do that in partnership with our community. So just to reinforce that, impaired drivers, suspicious people, suspicious actions, things of that nature, just like what Officer 2J said. If you see something, say something. And then finally, we know that we all want a safe community. So make your voices heard and share what a safe community means to you so that we can, in partnership, provide that safe community for all. And then in closing, you may have noticed that our officers, just like I, am wearing a shroud over our badge, a black band over our badge. And we do that to honor officers that have recently died in the line of duty. And we honor officers Jeffrey N. and Detective Lucas Benedetti, who tragically lost their lives in the service to their communities just this last week. So Pleasanton, I want to thank you for your time this evening. Thank you for engaging with your police department. And again, it is truly our honor